is the first in a series of interviews with notables in the Hancock Park, Windsor Square neighborhood. We're sitting in a beautiful house in the garden of a home on Rossmore. The Wilshire Country Club golf course is right behind us. And I'm sitting with Fluff Mclean here, who is one of the notables in the neighborhood, and I've known for a long time. And Fluff is, well, Fluff, I want to ask you first of all, where did the name Fluff come from? No one knows this, and I'm the only one who has the nerve to ask.
Okay, that was my second name. My first was Frederick Leonard. They didn't have a girl's name picked out for me, so what they did was they saw I looked like a little ball of fluff, and that's where I got it.
Okay, all right. Mm-hmm. Now, you are such a fixture in this neighborhood and so important in this neighborhood, and I'd like to ask you, what drew you to the neighborhood when you came here?
Well, actually, when I was a child, my parents had a lot of friends that lived here, and we would drive through the neighborhood going to the farmer's market or wherever, and I told my mother, one day I think I'm going to live in one of these houses. I love the houses. And she said, okay, and that was it. Then I met a man who wanted to live here, and I married him and moved to this area.
This is the wonderful Sandy.
Mm-hmm. This is the wonderful Sandy that I married to.
Now, and what year was that?
1974.
1974. And Fluff has so many titles. I know one of them was former president of the eBell. You're now the president of the Windsor Square-Hancock Park Association. Historical Society. I'm so sorry. The Windsor Square-Hancock Park Historical Society, and I was very active in that also. And Fluff is responsible for the home tours every year. And how did you get involved? Give me some other titles. What else have you been involved in?
Oh, I've been president of almost everything I've ever joined, and it's a long list. Currently, actually, I'm on the board of managers of the Hollywood Wilshire YMCA. Really a great organization with a lot of good stuff for kids and families and anybody of any age, actually. And I've kind of pared down some of the things I'm involved in.
Why? Well, I can't believe
because
that.
I'm actually working on my old house.
Oh, your house. That's
It's 90 years old now, and when you get to be 90, you need a facelift. And
was that your first? The house on Plymouth? You live between 3rd and 2nd on Plymouth.
Right.
Is that your first house? And that's
First
a charming
we moved
house.
in there 37 years ago.
Oh God. You know, one time we were driving around Windsor Square, and I pointed out a house on the corner of 3rd and Rossmore, which looks so unlike the rest of the homes in the neighborhood. And I said, "Oh, that house is." And you said that when you saw that being built, that you thought that was
A
resurgence in the neighborhood.
Well, it actually started probably before then. The oil crisis is what really saved our neighborhood, not to mention the banding together of all the homeowners associations. We have the Windsor Square Association, and then the Hancock Park Homeowners Association, which was founded in 1948. And so it's a little bit older than the one over in Windsor Square. But at the time that I moved into my house, they were buying property in Fremont Place and everywhere with the idea that they were going to tear it down and start making it into condos like they did down along Wilshire through Los Angeles. And everybody said, no, you're not going to do that. It's a wonderfully rich historical neighborhood with a lot of great architecture in it, and it would have been a real loss to the city if we had not saved it.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask you, do you remember the names of the people you bought your home from?
No.
I'm sorry. I should have asked you that before.
I don't. To be honest with you, I never met them, and I don't know who they are.
So Hancock Park, we were talking about how the original Arroyo, or the original.
Yeah. Well, what happened is in the 70s, if you remember, there was an oil crisis,
right,
as I mentioned, and so everybody was looking at this particular area as being far more desirable to live in because you're 5 miles from downtown, you're in between 2 major arteries, 2 freeways, you're not far from the beach, and it just seemed like it was a great place to live, and good bones of houses, and people started moving in, and that was it. And by the way, also a lot of longevity in this neighborhood. My block alone, I think we've had, I don't know how many people that have lived to be in their 90s. And they've lived there since like 1930 something or 1920 or 40, you know, and so there was a hesitancy to really want to give this up. we've got
Thank God
a
they
new,
didn't.
a new
Generation.
new energy coming in, and it's great.
Well, I know I moved here in '89 and was hesitant to get involved with the neighborhood bid because I was so busy, and then all of a sudden I did, and I got involved in like way too many things, and that's how I met Fluff. And but can you give us a little history of the original track and all that?
Well, contrary to popular belief, this whole area from between Western and Highland and Wilshire and Melrose is not all Hancock Park.
That's right.
It's Hancock Park. We'll start with that, even though it's the last to be developed. It didn't start until the 1920s. It was after the First World War. Hancock Park actually started from Rossmore over to Highland and Wilshire to Melrose. And it was part of the original Rancho La Brea, which was owned by the Hancock family. They had actually owned 4,432 acres, which is roughly a Spanish league, and it went in a pie shape from Wilshire up to the Hollywood Bowl. And so they owned all that land. Ida Hancock, when she was widowed, and Henry Hancock was her husband, and he's the one that bought the property. And she basically sold off Hollywood, sold off a lot of it, and then kept the lower part of it. And it passed on to G. Allen Hancock, who we are most familiar with because he's the one that basically made it into a residential district. He was making his money by having oil derricks everywhere. And so as soon as the land boom started happening and everybody wanted to move this way, he tore down his oil wells and started building houses.
It's amazing to think that there were any oil wells in this neighborhood.
Yeah.
And is that where the Getty Mansions had popped up eventually? The one like on Sunset that was used in Sunset Boulevard, on Crenshaw and Wilshire, and then the other ones that became the Mayor's Mansion?
Well, the interesting thing about the Mayor's Mansion is that it was never built or lived in by the Getty family. How that came about was that entire block from Wilshire to 6th Street, from Irving to Lorraine, was actually purchased by I can't remember the name of the thing, but it was the real estate arm of the Getty Oil, and they were going to put their headquarters there. And that was in the 1970s, early 70s.
Really?
And so what they did was they tore down the home that where Sunset Boulevard was, and
filmed,
and Rebel Without a Cause was filmed in that home. It's right on facing on Crenshaw Boulevard. I mean not Crenshaw, at Crenshaw and Wilshire.
Right, where Wilshire and Crenshaw
exactly.
did, right.
So they tore that down and put up their building, and then they were going to build behind it, and that's when the neighbors all banded together to create the homeowners association and said no. Now the Getty house was owned by that company, and they sold. They eventually, when they finally acquiesced and gave in to the community, they sold all of the property that was on those two streets, that block actually, and the only one they couldn't sell was the house that's known as Getty House.
Really? Why is that? What can they say?
I don't know. Maybe it was a location. It was on the corner of 6th Street,
I see.
and it's two lots deep. You know, it goes the front lot and it goes back to the street behind it, and it didn't have to be sold that way, but there was only one house on it. So they sold it. They didn't sell it. They actually gave it to the city to be the official residence of the mayor of Los Angeles, and it's been called the Getty House ever since.
Who knew this? I have the feeling Fluff is the first in a series of Fluff interviews.